Right, we're now joined via Zoom by Professor Samson Mampweli. He is the head of the Department of Science and Innovation's the Energy Secretariat at South African National Energy Development Institute. Thank you so much for your time this afternoon. So, this was obviously a very difficult task for Dr. Ramokgopa to be addressing the NEC and come up with this energy plan. And he has made certain interventions and undertakings, but one of the things that he did say is that he cannot commit that load shedding will end by 2023. This, of course, is despite what the ANC's SG had indicated is likely to happen. Your thoughts?
Good afternoon to you and the viewers. I think the Minister of Electricity is quite right when he says that load shedding will not end by the end of this year. There's quite a number of things that need to happen quite urgently for load shedding to end. We have a number of power stations, about 6 power stations that are problematic, coal-fired power stations. Those power stations need to be fixed. The Eskom board and Minister Pravin Gordhan and the Eskom management have done root cause analysis on those power stations before the Minister of Electricity came into the picture. And I heard him referring to some of the plans that Eskom has got in place to return the energy availability factor to about 60%. If we sit at 60% by the end of this year, we will still need the energy availability factor to move to about 70% and above. That is what the integrated resource plan had assumed will happen for us to have adequacy or adequate supply of electricity. So we'll still have that about 10% shortage that we need to deal with in terms of returning those units to service and ensuring that we've got reliable supply of electricity. So he has been very he's giving the truth in my view. But having said all that, it's not like there isn't anything that can be done. We're still in March. We're going to April. We still have about some good time for us to deal with the 6 power stations that are giving us problems. If National Treasury gives the correct exemption for Eskom, and then Eskom deals specifically with this aging fleet that has not been properly maintained, and bring forward human resources and original equipment manufacturers and buy their time to ensure that they camp in these power stations and fix them. It can be with, like what Minister Mantashe has been saying, within 6 to 8 months, load shedding could be a thing of the past. So I think the Minister of Electricity is giving the reality, given the current situation, and government is trying by all means to try and ensure that load shedding disappears.
And having had said that, Prof, especially if you look at the energy availability factor that you are speaking of, and just taking some of the utterances that we heard in that press briefing by the NEC members, the party saying that it has come up with several interventions to secure 4,500 megawatts within the next 6 months and 12,000 megawatts between 6 and 18 months. Is this something that is possible, just given what we are currently seeing now in terms of those problematic power stations that you are alluding to, and also the fact that demand is going to be increasing because we are heading to winter?
Yeah, it is possible to bring those megawatts that government is talking about. They just need to focus on that. I got a bit concerned when they started talking about other things that are not part of the energy action plan sometime during the week when they were talking about the extension of life of some power stations. And these power stations are still in ICU. You can't be talking about extending the life of someone who is sitting in ICU. You must first ensure that that person is out of ICU. Now, coming back to that question, we've got about 6,000 megawatts that's out for maintenance as things stand. So those megawatts should have been back by now, and they should be back before winter so that we don't have a very difficult winter. The challenge, though, is that even when they come back, we don't have reliability. We're not sure whether they will come and operate reliably, because the biggest problem that Eskom is facing at the moment is that when they can take down a unit in a power station and then they fix it. When they return that unit to service, another unit breaks down, or the same unit, another component breaks down. So the system needs renewal. It needs to be renewed, so that it can be reliable. So they can bring back those 6,000 megawatts. It's possible, and it will relieve the national grid if that happens. And then they've got about, last time I checked, I think it was about 15 to 16,000 megawatts. That's down because of breakdowns. I heard the minister also referring to that. How fast they bring that back also determines what stages of load shedding we're going to have. If they fail to bring back those 15 to 16,000 megawatts plus the 6,000 megawatts that I talked about, we're going to have a very bleak winter. It's going to be very rough. We may go to very high stages of load shedding, if not a total collapse of the system.
Prof, you're obviously talking about the minister being razor sharp in his focus between now, essentially, and the next 6 to 18 months or so. So what do we then make of these concerns that we are hearing in as far as his roles and responsibilities are concerned? We are now hearing that, he may take away certain roles and responsibilities that are currently residing with the Department of Minerals and Energy, as well as the Public Enterprises Ministry. What sort of roles and responsibilities do you think that, in those three entities would need to then come into his space, or, some removed in his space, so that this plan that he has, this plan that he's presented now to the NEC, can actually come to fruition?
So he does not necessarily need to take any role and responsibility from any of the two departments, the Department of Public Enterprises and the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy. He needs to focus on the management of the implementation of the Energy Action Plan, which is basically what he presented today. And I know the Energy Action Plan for quite some time, because I also worked on parts of the Energy Work Action Plan. I was part of the NECOM work streams, the Energy Crisis Committee work streams. It's a very good plan. So all he needs to do is to focus on bringing what the president referred to as the one-stop shop, and manage the implementation of the Energy Action Plan, firm it up, get timelines, and secure the money to implement the Energy Action Plan. There are parts that are already moving. For instance, if you look at the removal of the licensing requirements that was proposed by Minister Mantashe, that is also already working, because we're looking at about 3,000 megawatts that will come through the IPP, from the IPP space. There are a number of other things like your small-scale embedded generation. The Minister of Finance announced the 25% rebate or 25,000 rands rebate, and those things will start to kick in. My biggest concern is the fact that we don't have so far money that has been identified and ring-fenced to fix the 6 coal power stations that are giving problems. In my view, the Minister of Electricity should have stopped the appropriation bill for the 250-something billion rand and ensure that part of that money goes to fixing the Eskom power stations, because Eskom's balance sheet will not have the money to fix those power stations, and Eskom cannot go out and borrow. They're already sitting in huge debt with a very high interest rate. So money needs to come from national treasury, from the fiscus to fix, and it's about 130 to 140 billion rand that is required to fix these 6 power stations. So national government needs to make a very bold decision, because if you look at the cost of unserved energy to the economy and the country, it's quite massive compared to the 130 to 140 billion that I'm talking about.
And Prof, as we wrap our interview and you're just talking about finances and money issues, one of the biggest concern, of course, is that Eskom just needs so much of the money that it doesn't have. I mean, we heard this afternoon that 30 billion rand is going to be made available for diesel procurement as a start. But on the other hand, we know that there is a labor dispute that is currently brewing at Eskom. How much of this wage dispute will affect the utility currently? I mean, the workers are asking for some 15% salary increase, and Eskom is offering about 3% of that. I mean, how is this going to play out?
So any wage dispute is not a good thing when we're sitting in the position that we're sitting in. We're sitting in a very sensitive kind of a situation. You will recall that last time we had a wage dispute or a labor dispute because it extended from wage to other benefits that the workers were demanding. We had to shift to very high stages of load shedding because it got to a level where the workers were not happy. They started an industrial action that resulted in some of the services that are supposed to be provided by the same workers not being provided in power stations. We don't want to get to that level. My view is that, the Eskom management and also government need to come together and sit with the Eskom employees and come up with a very quick solution before the situation escalates. Because once the situation escalates and we're facing this very high stages of load shedding, it could plunge the country into 100% blackout. And once that happens, it means that life comes to a standstill. We won't have petrol in petrol stations. You won't be able to have network, so meetings like this won't be able to happen. You won't have any of the services that are required. So basically, life comes to a standstill, and we don't want to get to that level.
Prof, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Really do appreciate it. Of course, Professor Samson Mamphweli giving us the analysis on what we are currently seeing in terms of the energy crisis in this country. Well, coming up after the break, we continue to look at the ANC-NEC conference currently underway. In fact, the meeting there, and we will give you an update on the situation as well in Sudan. But plenty in store coming up. Stay with us.